All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Global Women's Leadership Summit with Fred Kofman. And before we start, can everyone hear me loud and clear? So just please enter in the chat box or raise your hand so you can hear me, and we can just check in that everyone's can hear me okay. That's fantastic. Great, thank you very much. So my name is Grant Watty, and I'm really excited to have you all joining us from all over the world today. And thank you for attending the GWOL Summit and participating in such an important mission, which is the professional advancement of women around the world. Now, the Global Women's Leadership Summit is the world's first and largest online women's leadership event, and really we've got a simple mission, and that's to dramatically impact the leadership capability and professional advancement of over 5 million women leaders by 2020. And over the last 11 months, really, we've been looking around the world to bring you the very top thought leaders and experts on the advancement of women to further this mission. And I'm really excited to have met Fred, and you know, Fred really did come highly recommended from a number of places, and you know, it's been a pleasure getting to know Fred, and the material that he'll be presenting today is absolutely first class, first rate, and I recommend it really highly. Now let's just cover some of the housekeeping. Of course, engage in the sessions and give your full attention, and turn off any distractions. I've posted a link to our Facebook wall. You can post any questions that you might have there, and also we'll provide a link at the end to Fred's exclusive presenter page where you can visit his website and connect with him there. And finally, let's just make this time together count. As you listen to Fred, just listen for one or two things that you can apply in action in the next 24 hours, and that will make a huge difference in your life, given the material that Fred's presenting. Now, it does give me very great pleasure to introduce you to Fred Kofman. He's the author of Conscious Business, How to Build Value Through Values. He's the director of the Conscious Business Center at Universidad Francisco Moroquin, faculty member at Lenin, and member of the Academic Board of Exiliant. And since '96, Fred has designed and facilitated programs on leadership, personal mastery, team learning, organizational effectiveness, and coaching for thousands of executives and consultants worldwide. And he's earned a PhD in economics from the University of California at Berkeley, became professor of management accounting at MIT's Sloan School of Management, and '92 was named Teacher of the Year, founding member of the business branch of Ken Wilber's Integral Institute. You know, he facilitates programs for the likes of Google, Facebook, Yahoo. I know Sheryl Sandberg recommends him as one of the most important thought leaders in leadership today. And he leads seminars right around the world, basically. And I'm not sure if you've been to Melbourne though, Fred, but if not, we certainly hope to see you down here. His book, Conscious Business, has been translated to more than 10 languages, and his articles have appeared in publications such as Econometrica, Journal of Public Economics, the Fifth Discipline Field Book, Journal of Organizational Dynamics. Fred lives with his wife, Christian, in Antigua, Guatemala. He enjoys outdoor sports and activities such as hiking, mountain climbing, skiing, sailing, scuba diving, and golf. And you can connect with him at consciousbusinesscenter.ufm.edu. Fred, it's a great pleasure to have met you and to introduce you today. Over to you.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you, Grant. It's a great pleasure to participate in this webinar and in this conference that you've organized, celebrating the feminine spirit in leadership. And what I'd like to contribute is a perspective on heroism and what it is that leaders bring to our life as examples of moral inspiration. So I'd like to share some ideas that have been quite powerful for me and for my clients. But more important than my sharing the ideas, I would love to interact as much as possible with the people listening and sharing their perspectives and asking questions or comments that you will, I know, will have a time at the end for you to share that. But I may break the rules a little bit, and I may ask people to share some thoughts in the middle, because I have 2 or 3 questions that I want to ask people as exercises to do with me as we go through the presentation. So maybe when we do the exercises, I'll ask people to share some of their reactions or some of the ideas and take some of those into account. I'm trying to make this as similar as possible to a live presentation, where I would certainly interact with whoever is participating. So let me start with a typical hero from today, Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games. And well, she's portrayed as an example of courage and well, heroism. And there's something really powerful about having these ideas or these images of women as heroes. But just like men or women or any character that's heroic in the typical fiction today, they create a barrier, they create a separation where we feel that heroes appear only in epic stories like the Hunger Games. And that's danger, because the true heroism is one that's much closer to home. True heroism, in my view, is standing up for what's right, what's true, what's beautiful, what's just. And that is not something that requires a lot of physical courage, although it's part of it. But much more important than physical courage is moral courage. The moral to stand up for the truth, the moral to stand up for justice. This is a picture of Malala Yousafzai, an Afghani girl who defied the Taliban by going to school in a culture where women should be uneducated and is considered a sacrilege for a girl to learn. She defied the old traditions and beliefs and stood up for her right and the right of other girls to live their life as they want to, and be instructed and learn and know the world and be independent and free thinkers. And she had to confront great danger, and in fact there was an attempt on her life, unsuccessful luckily, now she's become kind of an image of heroism. But this is the kind of heroism I want to talk about. It's the heroism that happens every day. Malala is certainly a dramatic example because she was shot. If she hadn't been shot, maybe she wouldn't be so famous. But the heroic part of her experience is not that she was shot. The heroic part was that she couldn't be dissuaded from teaching everybody what she was experiencing by the danger of the terrorists trying to curtail her possibility of going to school. This is the kind of heroism that is available to each one of us, is the kind of heroism that we can enact in our lives, and it's the kind of heroism that I hope we will all be inspired to demonstrate and share with others day in and day out. So in the next hour, I'd like to give you some of the things that I learned about heroism and about power and example and principle. And as I said, have a couple of exercises, 3 or 4 exercises that I'll invite you to do and have a chance to share what you're discovering from the exercises, and then have some time for questions and dialogue. Well, the question of heroism will start with some very maybe trivial example of doing a diet. And if I use the diet as an example, what I learned very painfully is that many times what tastes good is not good, and what is good does not taste good. So in life, you don't want to follow a science, or you don't want to choose your nutrition based on taste. You want to choose your nutrition based on science. Similarly in life, many times what feels good is really not that good, the easy path, and what is good does not feel so good. So we need something like a science of nutrition for life. And I'm going to call this philosophy. Philosophy is the mother of all sciences. Philosophy is the investigation of the right way to live. However, philosophy, like nutrition, is not going to recommend that we eat chocolate cake. If we have, we don't need a nutritional science to tell us that chocolate cake is great. We know it's great. Sugar and fat taste wonderful. Veggies, unless you acquire the taste, they can't compete with French fries and things like that. So I want to change this general dictum that says that people always do what is best for them, because that's not true. People always do what they feel is best for them. And here feel is the critical word, because I'm going to argue that what we feel, unless we're trained to feel, is going to be not a good guidance for how to act. And heroism is exactly to not act based on untrained feeling, but to train your feeling so that you have a moral compass that, guided by science, leads you to take the actions that further your life and the life of everybody around you. Morality, from a scientific point of view, is the science of enhancing the life of conscious beings. There's a whole movement of scientific morality that takes the guidance of medical sciences, saying just like we can study, even though it's not mathematics and it's not engineering, we can study what is healthy and what is not healthy. Well, we can also study what is healthy and not healthy for the soul. So we're going to talk about the untrained feeling and how the untrained feeling leads us astray, and how the trained feeling can help us, can guide us to take the steps that are going to further our life and the one of those around us. However, this is going to be very difficult. I want to warn you that the material I present is very, very simple, just like a diet, but it's equally difficult to carry out. Why? And the reason is quite profound, and it has to do with Darwin. 100,000 years ago, when our ancestors, almost proto-humans, were roaming the different parts of the world, there were, let's just say that in the gene pool, there was a gene that would lead people to feel that it tasted good to eat carrots. And there was another gene that led people to eat fat, that the fat tasted better and yummy, and where carrots, I mean, were okay, but not nearly as good. So if you had a choice between the carrot and, of course, there was no French fries, but something that was made with fat, like meat with lots of fat, the meat would taste much better. Now, 100,000 years ago, the probability of dying of starvation was 1,000,000 times the probability of dying of heart disease. I doubt anybody died of heart disease based on high cholesterol and arteries being blocked. People didn't make it that far. Life expectancy was probably below 20 years old. So there's not much chance to develop blocked or hardened arteries. So 100,000 years ago, those people those of our ancestors who ate the carrots and not the meat with fat, they never made it through the famine. So they didn't reproduce, and those genes disappeared from the gene pool. That means our true ancestors are the ones that went for the fat. These are the ones that would have loved French fries and ice cream, and that's why we love French fries and ice cream, because the gene pool only maintained those genes that wanted to fatten up during the times of plenty so that they would survive those famines. And now we have genes that are leading us to eat the same thing we liked, we meaning humanity 100,000 years ago, but now the environment has changed. So now we don't, our number one cause of death in advanced countries are nutritional diseases like cardiovascular disease and cancers and many of these things that are, and diabetes that are related to what tastes good to us. So I'm going to say that in the mind there's a similar pattern. They're not genes, but they are memes. It's the word of Richard Dawkins for ideas that reproduce themselves, ideas that are ways of thinking. And as Einstein said, we can't solve the problems we have with the same kind of thinking we used to create them. So whatever is troubling in our life is created by some kind of thinking, not necessarily independent of the external world, but what we call problems are things that we struggle with because we don't have a philosophy to correct them. We don't have a philosophy to live in peace with them. So I'm going to suggest we do memetic engineering. We look at some of these basic patterns and we discover what is true heroism and how we can use the spirit of heroism in dealing with the problems that we encounter in everyday life. Not problems like Katniss Everdeen, who had to kill 12 other kids to survive, and based on this horrible domination by a central empire. But this is the typical things that we struggle with. But I'm going to use another hero, which is Neo. In the movie The Matrix, Morpheus tells Neo, this is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, you wake up in your bed tomorrow, and you believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. I mean, that's the crucial point of the movie, where the hero is offered an alternative. Is you can take the blue pill, and in fact there's an antagonist or the anti-hero, one of them, which is Cypher, which is the traitor, kind of like a Judas, who after taking the red pill, he tells Neo, why didn't I take the blue pill? And in fact he goes back and forgets whatever he has learned. But Neo chooses the red pill, which is a show of heroism to say, I want to know the truth. And I have to warn you that some of the things that I'm going to share with you today are, it's really a point of no return, because they're so obvious that after you realize these things, you can't stop seeing them everywhere, and you're going to have a very strong temptation to start preaching to other people. And I'll tell you from my painful experience, preaching doesn't work. So this is not something to teach, this is something to live, and only under I would say not under duress, but only in this very special circumstance where hopefully you're interested in me sharing what I have learned quite painfully and struggling like everybody. I tell you these thoughts, but I never speak about this, and I certainly never pontificate. I don't tell people these ideas because they are extremely irritating. It'll be like walking around the world, and every time you're in a restaurant and somebody that's overweight is going to eat something that it's not going to be good for them, you stop them and say, oh, you can't eat that because you're fat, and you shouldn't eat food that is going to make you even fatter. Okay, you can imagine that's not going to go well with any of your friends or your acquaintances. So similar to this, you may be tempted to share some of these ideas. Please refrain from the temptation and just apply them to yourself, and you'll see they are incredibly challenging. So I'll start with some very basic fact about the human mind, and it's something that in economics we call bounded rationality. Bounded rationality means that we don't have the capacity to see the whole world. Imagine you enter into a dark room and you're using a flashlight with a narrow beam. Now, if this room may have 2 walls, one of them painted red, the other painted blue. If you point your flashlight to your left, well, you're going to see the blue wall. And it's true that you can say, this room is blue. According to your impression, the room is blue. But if you point your flashlight to the other wall, to your right, you would see red. And if that's all you see, you're going to say the room looks red to me. Now, the truth is the room is both red and blue, but our minds are limited and we cannot comprehend the nature of reality in its fullness. So we have to attenuate, the bandwidth. We have to reduce the level of information that we experience or that we take into consideration so we can process it. Because if we absorb everything that's happening, it would be so chaotic, it would be impossible for our brains. So filtering is one of the most important things our brains do in order to manage the complexity of information hitting our senses moment by moment. Now, let me do a thought experiment with you. Imagine me in front of you, and if you've seen any of my videos, you probably will see this. I do this experiment very often. And holding an apple in one hand and then dropping the apple. And I do this in front of my audience, and then I'll ask people, and I'm asking you, so why does the apple fall? And obviously, primed by this picture of Isaac Newton, you might be prone to say gravity, which is true. I mean, the apple falls because of gravity, but it's not the whole truth. That would be like the blue wall. Okay, you're pointing your flashlight and you're seeing gravity. If you point your flashlight to your right, however, you would see that the apple also falls because I let go. So the fall of the apple is really a combination of two factors, gravity and let go. But which one of these two comes first to mind is a pre-conscious choice that is going to really take you into a totally different direction. Because everything that happens in the world can be explained by forces that are out of control and forces that are within control. For example, gravity is a force out of control. Letting go, it's a force within control. So why does the apple fall? Well, both. But life, as I said, is very complex, and we have to choose which ones we are going to focus our flashlights on. And if we focus on one or the other, we are going to go down a very, very different path. On the one hand, we can go to peace and a sense of expansiveness in the face of an interesting life, adventure, heroism. On the other life, we'll go to resentment and resignation. Now, why would anybody be so crazy as to choose the path that takes us to resentment and resignation? Well, you'll see that it's very easy. This is like saying, one type of diet is going to take us to heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. The other type of diet is going to take us to a long, healthy, and happy life. Which one do you want? I mean, of course, when you put it like this, everybody's going to say, I want the second. But when you say, yes, but the second implies you have to stop eating many of the things that taste the best to you, then people may say, I think I'm willing to trade off a few years at the tail end of my life for the pleasure of the immediate gratification. So let me give you why this is so important. In every action that a human being takes, it's based on a tension between a certain situation and a certain aspiration. So like a battery, the energy to take action is when something does not go according to our desires. When everything is going fantastic, there's no drama, there's no tension, there's no energy. Just like a dead battery where the two poles of the battery have the same charge. Well, there's no reason to move, there's no reason to do anything. So, for example, right now, you are listening to me, and I could say, well, why? Well, my belief is that you're doing this because you have an intuition that by participating in this conference or listening to this presentation, you may get something that may be useful to make your life a little better, more like you'd like it to be. Maybe you'd like to be more heroic in your life, or maybe you have some issues that require great courage and you'd like to have some guidelines on how to train yourself or how to think about the world in a way that supports you in taking the steps that you'd like to take. So whatever it is, there has to be this gap between what's happening in this moment and what you would like to happen in the future. Whenever you experience the gap, the most important question is a diagnosis, is to ask, well, why is this not as good as I like it? What's going on that makes life less beautiful or less just or less truthful or less fulfilling that I would like it to be? And when you ask why, this is the moment of truth. This is the moment where you choose the path that leads to peace and expansiveness, or the one that leads to resignation and resentment. So the moment, the critical moment where heroism starts, the critical moment where consciousness makes a difference is when you are in trouble. When you say, oh my God, you know, why this? Why is this happening to me? In the breakdown where things go wrong, or where you realize this is not good. This is not the way I want it. It could be a sudden onset, but it could also be something that you grow awareness over time. And at some point, it just dawns on you, this sucks. I mean, this is just not good. And then you have to say, well, why is this not good? And the temptation is to focus on the things that are out of your control. So, for example, if you look at this man that is under the rain, and I ask this man, why did you get wet? You know, of course, he could say, because I did not bring an umbrella. Very few people say that. Most people, when they're in this situation, and you ask them when they walk in, what happened? Why did you get wet? They say, well, it was raining outside, which is true. But it's a truth that is focusing the flashlight on the part of the situation that is out of control. So if a person thinks, well, I got wet because it rained, then there's a very subtle message that he is giving himself, which is, as long as it rains, I'm going to get wet. And not seeing that he is participating in his getting wet. He could say, well, I didn't bring an umbrella when it rained. Now, that doesn't, talking about the umbrella does not deny that it did rain. But as I said before, the truth is multifaceted. The truth has factors that are within control and factors that are out of control. And the whole point is, which ones are you going to choose? Are you going to choose those that are out of control or the ones that are within control? Let me give you an example to see how insidious this is. You've probably been in a meeting when someone arrives late. If you ask the person, why are you late? I mean, maybe you have been to meetings where you arrive late. Or I can guarantee this week or next, somebody's going to arrive late to a meeting with you. And if you ask them what happened, or even before you ask them, because they know you have this question, I guarantee, what do you think they're going to say? I did not plan my trip carefully. Well, most people will say traffic. I mean, the reason I'm late was traffic was horrible. That's a universal excuse in Australia, in South America, in North America, in China, in Russia, everywhere. Europe, everywhere I go, I teach, in different parts of the world, and I ask the same question: what's the typical excuse people arrive? Every big city has traffic, and traffic is like gravity. It's the universal excuse, or like rain. Everybody uses it. Now, when people are a little more sophisticated, they'll say things like, "Well, I was in a meeting and it ran over. I couldn't leave. The meeting ran over." And notice that both traffic and the meeting ran over are examples of factors out of control. The guy was talking, he kept going on and on and on. Somebody was doing this, and I was trapped. I mean, this is not, people won't say that, but they'll say, I couldn't get out of it. Now, we know that's not true. If you ask someone, well, but at what time did you leave? Or what did you do when the meeting went over? They have to acknowledge that their being late is a combination. There's no denial of traffic, and there's no denial of the fact that the other meeting ran over. But the point is, what wall do you point your flashlight at? And the reason why people choose the blue wall, why people take the blue pill over and over again, is that they want to be innocent. We all want to be innocent, and we have genes that want to be innocent. If you think, again, let me go back 100,000 years, or maybe 50,000 years when our ancestors were a little more human, of our final shape, like now fully developed brains and all that. One unfortunate fact of their life was they just did not have enough food, and they died in very high rates. And many times they had to choose which of their offspring they're going to keep alive, because there was not enough food to feed all the children, and some of them would die, or they were all sick and they couldn't carry them, or whatever. And well, there were the troublemakers that looked like troublemakers, and there are the troublemakers that looked like they were innocent, or they were more worried. They had more of a genetic predisposition to look innocent. Well, who do you think the parents were going to choose? The ones that looked rebellious and difficult to handle, or the ones that were more, that at least appeared to be more amenable to relating to the parents and not causing trouble? Well, we are the children of those children who looked innocent, and we have an ingrained predisposition to tell the story of any problem in a way that makes us innocent. It's an automatic instinct. That's why we immediately blame traffic, or we immediately blame the other meeting, or we immediately blame anything. The problem is that the price of innocence is impotence, because every time we claim that the factor that determined this negative outcome is a factor out of our control, we're also giving ourselves the subtle message that I had nothing to do with it. This is not my fault, and therefore there's nothing I can do about this because I am not in this system. It's just like pointing a flashlight with my straight arm. I can point a flashlight everywhere except back to me. I have to bend my arm, or I have to grab the flashlight in the opposite direction and say, oh, no, there's not only the outside world, but there's also what I'm doing in this outside world. And that is just not something that feels so good. It feels much nicer to blame other people. I call the philosophy of the victim. I call this the philosophy of the victim because it's an automatic instinct to call ourselves victims of circumstances. You know, they made me do it. You are making me angry. They are not giving me the information. Every time that you tell a story that focuses on what other people are doing and does not complete the picture with how you're responding to it, you are choosing to be a victim. And so do I. Okay, but let me put my caveat again. Calling someone a victim is like calling someone, you know, fat and unhealthy. This is not a way to help anybody. I use this mostly with myself, and I call myself, say, oh, Fred, here you're being a victim again. You know, you're blaming all the other people for your misfortunes, and you are not putting yourself in the picture. So it's okay. It's a very strong word to use with myself, but this is not a word that I would use with anybody else, except if they want to, you know, be challenged, and then I would help them as a coach, letting them see that they're presenting themselves as a victim of circumstance. You know, this, as I said, this starts very early in life. I never had one of my children come to me saying, oh, the toy broke. I broke the toy. What they always said is, sorry, Daddy, it broke. I mean, notice that the it broke is impersonal. There's no subject. It's like the toy killed itself, committed suicide, and the child had nothing to do with its breaking. Or the milk decided to spill, and just by no external force, the milk spilled. And if I asked, why did the milk spill, they would say something like gravity. I mean, unfortunately, they heard me do this presentation a long time ago, and they learned that gravity can explain why many things fall and break. And if they are fighting, and I stop them and I ask, who started it? Of course, each one of them will point to the other. And I'll ask my son, why are you hitting your sister? And he'll say, well, she stuck her tongue at me. Now, what he's not saying is, I had to hit her. I didn't have a choice. In fact, she hit herself through me. I'm like a robot, and whenever she pushes the button, well, I have to hit her because I'm an automaton. So it's not my fault. It's her fault for sticking her tongue at me, and she had it coming. Now, these people grow up, and they'll say things like, the project got delayed. Notice that it's the same construct, the same syntax of the other sentence. There's no human action here. It's just a force of nature that the project got delayed, like it got soaked by the rain, or the file got lost, or of course when there's a problem in a relationship, be it professional or personal, each person will naturally blame the other for the difficulty. But as a couples therapist, one told me, there's no such thing as the hole is in your side of the boat. When you're in a relationship, you're in the boat together, and it doesn't really matter on which side the hole is. It's both of the people's problem. That's a very painful lesson that I keep learning again and again and again. And no matter how many times I learn it, life seems to want to teach it to me again, because it's such a temptation to blame other people for their misfortunes. So, having seen this philosophy of the victim, I like to do a very quick exercise with you, which is to choose some little misfortune that is happening to you or happened recently. Just don't start with the 500-pound weight. Let's start with a simple one. Somebody stood you up, or you had a problem. So I'll give you an example typical from my life, that I have too much to do. There's just too much to do. There are too many things in my calendar and so on. And I feel victimized by the things I have to do. So I'm going to tell you the story as a victim. I'm going to tell you how, poor thing I am, and it's not my fault, and I'm just a victim of circumstance. Now, to do this exercise properly, you would have to all validate me. You would have to all say, oh my God, Fred, that's terrible, poor thing, we feel so sorry for you, that's really bad, these other people are abusing you. So I just imagine that you're doing this, but please do it in your mind. As I tell you my long, sad, and painful story, please make sure that in your mind you feel pity, and you express your condolences to me. So what happened to me is that my calendar is just full. There's things every day. I have no time to think. There are all these commitments that are there, and I just have to travel all over the world to teach these seminars. Well, who's to blame? Of course, all the people that are asking me. I mean, they keep calling me and asking me, can you do this here? Can you do that there? Even Grant is to blame, for asking me to do this, because this was one more of my commitments. I had to come back and make sure I prepare the presentation and give me presentation. So like this, there are all these people that have great ideas and great causes and great opportunities, and they just drive me crazy, and it's unhealthy, and I'm not taking care of myself. So what did he do wrong? Well, all these people, what they do wrong is keep asking me and keep pushing me and saying, oh please, we need you, or we'd like you to, or we'll pay you all this money, and tempting me. That's just not right. That's like being in a cruise ship and eating like a pig and saying, well, they keep putting all this food in front of us. When I go to a cruise ship and they put food all day long, I mean, how can you stop yourself? I mean, that's just the problem. What should they have done, well, they should be mindful that, you know, I'm a human being and I have other needs, and I can't just be working all the time. I mean, I need some time to do my own things. And what should they do now? Well, they should refrain from asking. They shouldn't tempt me. They shouldn't, you know, ask me to participate in noble causes or in economically very profitable enterprises, because those things are so tempting that they ultimately they're going to ruin my life. Okay, so do you feel sorry enough for me? I mean, I'm in a different situation than most people because I work on my own, but most people that work in a company will say, well, I just have too much to do. You know, my boss keeps asking me to do all these things. But it's the same story. I can't say my boss keeps asking because I don't have a boss, but my clients keep asking. Well, obviously, you know, this is funny. It feels good. I suggest that you do this. Just take a second and choose your favorite problem and just imagine how comfortable it is, how rewarding, how soothing and comforting it is for you to tell the story like a victim, to tell the story like they're doing this to me, just like I told you this story. And notice the temptation. This is like a drug. So, you know, victimhood, it's an amazing drug because on the one hand, it tranquilizes you, saying it's not your fault. On the other hand, it euphorizes you, it energizes you by saying, oh, you know, you have the right to be righteously indignant because other people have wronged you and they have to pay. And you know, you have the right to blame them, and you have the right to complain, and you have the right to hurt them, even to just be angry at them, yell at them, because they did it, so they deserve it. Now, this is a very, very appealing drug. Normally, you have uppers or downers. You know, some drugs that will bring you up, or some others that bring you down. Well, this does both. It brings you up and down at the same time. It's quite amazing and quite addictive. Like every drug, it has a very good first hit, and then over time it kills you. That's the little problem. Because whatever you blame, you empower. And when you become innocent, you also become impotent. So the way I told you the story, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's what we do all the time. We tell the story like the other people are doing things to us. And you know, what I've said is true, but that's not the point. It's just that it's the part of the truth that doesn't depend on me. So it's the part of the truth that leads me to resentment and resignation. And that's the blue pill of the victim. The alternative is the red pill of the player. Let me use one of my heroes, Cesar Millan. He's the dog whisperer. It's a program that now is syndicated all over the world. I assigned this for my leadership classes. I ask people to watch this because, as he says, he rehabilitates dogs, but he trains owners. He doesn't train the dogs. He trains the owners. It's a very fun program. I strongly recommend it. But you see that every program has the same script. Well, now they do several stories, but originally they had one story in the first couple seasons. And the story was always, there's a dog with bizarre behavior. It's just doing strange things. And people are desperate, so they call Cesar. And Cesar goes to the house, and as he walks in, he asks, well, what's the problem? And everybody talks about the dog. You know, the dog does this and that, or, you know, the dog starts barking, and I can't bring friends to my house because whenever I bring a friend to my house, the dog becomes aggressive. And, you know, the other day it bit one of my friends. It's terrible, and I just don't know what to do. It's such a nice dog, but I can't keep it like this, and so on. And Cesar just listens. Yes, I understand. Okay, and then he asks the pivotal question, the question that changes everything. And he asks the person, so what did you do when the dog became aggressive with your friend? And you can see the shock in the faces of people, because they called Cesar to talk about the dog. They never call Cesar to talk about themselves. So when he has this question, he's turning the flashlight back to them and saying, no, okay, I understand about the dog, but now I wanna look at you. What are you doing to create this situation? And people just are shocked to no end in that very moment. You can see the strike of fears in their eyes. And they say, well, I tried to soothe the dog. I mean, just calming down, and I picked it up and I started stroking it. So, okay, so when your dog becomes aggressive, you give the dog affection and recognition, so the dog understands that this is the good thing, that you're rewarding the dog for being aggressive and displaying the behavior that it's displaying. Well, no, but that's not my intention. And Cesar always says, well, what matters is not your intention. What matters is what the dog understands. And when you pick up the dog and stroke it, the dog is receiving affection, which is considered a reward for certain behavior. Well, you have to watch the program to see how that continues, but it's quite amazing how the demonstration becomes a very, like, it turns from the dog to the person. And what Cesar is showing them, and what I would like to invite you to consider, is that responsibility is the price of power. That really you have to take the director's chair, and what happens in your life is not just a function of external circumstances, but you have something to do with it. And this is not out of meanness, but it's the recognition that if you're not part of the problem, you just cannot be a part of the solution because you don't see yourself in the system. So the price to pay to be a part of the solution is to recognize that you are contributing to create the very situation you don't like. I call this the philosophy of the hero. I mean, this is the philosophy of achievement and heroism. It starts with the recognition that the fundamental question in life is not what's happening to me, but what can I do in response to what's happening to me. This is the fundamental problem that we have to solve. Not what is happening to me, but what can I do to respond what is happening to me. So just let me do very quickly the exercise, but now being a player. So what's the challenge? Again, now I don't have a problem as a player. I'm in the field, and this is my ball. So I have to respond to the ball. You know, imagine I'm a tennis player, and any ball that comes to me is a challenge. This is not a problem; it's a challenge. And I can't blame the other player for throwing a difficult shot. The whole point is that he wants to make my life difficult by challenging me. So what's the challenge? My challenge is my calendar is so full that I feel overwhelmed. What do I want to accomplish? I want to have more balance in my life. What have I done so far? Well, complain. Well, what can I do next? Now, here's the key thing, is what can I do? And this is not about blaming other people, but obviously in this case what I can do is start choosing what I do and what I don't do and say no. If I was an employee, again, my choice would be how to negotiate with my boss what kind of commitments I can make given the budget of time and energy that I have to allocate to my work. And if that budget is being exceeded regularly, I could have a conversation with my boss saying, look, our agreement was this, but I'm finding myself working till midnight every day, and I don't want to say no to you, but as I say yes, the number of things, at least given my capacity, is exceeding the number of hours and the agreement that we made. Could I have prevented this? Could I have prevented my calendar being so full? Of course, I could have prevented this precisely by making wiser choices. Well, what can I learn? Well, what I can learn is that I need to stand up for my beliefs, my truth, my desire to take care of myself, and even at the risk of other people not liking me so much, sometimes I should say no, because whenever I say yes to others, I'm saying no to myself, or I'm saying no to the people that are closer to me, my family, and I'm feeling the reward of my professional affiliation and the gratification of my accomplishments, but I am also creating a liability in terms of my personal relationships that are not being attended as I would like to attend them. There's a nice story, and since Grant is Australian, I decided to use this story from a Qantas flight. Imagine you were in this Qantas flight from Singapore to Australia where one of the engines blew up. And you're sitting there, and then the pilot comes out and he just sits next to you. And you're horrified, look at the pilot and say, what the hell are you doing? And he says, well, this is not my problem. So what do you mean it's not your problem? Well, this is maintenance problem. They didn't check the engine. You know, I'm not an expert in maintenance. It blew up, but I didn't do anything wrong. What would you say to the pilot? Go back to the cockpit. You have to fly this plane. And if the pilot says, why? Well, the reason is because you're the pilot. And when you're the pilot, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. This is your plane. Anything that happens on your watch is your responsibility. This is not a question of who did anything wrong. This is a question of your responsibility as a pilot. Well, what I'm saying is that you're the pilot of your life. So anything that happens on your watch, you have to respond to. And I know this is not fair. Maybe the people in maintenance didn't do it right, and maybe the engine was defective, so it's manufacturer, and that's just the nature of things. And I'm sure that many of the problems in your life are caused by external circumstances. You know, this is not self-made, but like the pilot of that Qantas flight, you can't just leave the cockpit and say, oh, well, this is not up to me because I didn't do it. I didn't break it. I don't have to fix it. Well, what's broken in this case is your life, and it's on your watch. So you do have to fix it if you want it fixed. Anything that happens, anything that matters to you, it's your problem. It is a very challenging way to live, but it's a very heroic way to live that says, what matters to me is what I care about. I am going to take responsibility for everything. And responsibility is not to fix it. It's not responsibility for causality, but it's responsibility in the face of what happens. Now, when you take this type of responsibility, this commitment to respond to what happens, most people feel overwhelmed. And they feel overwhelmed because they have another virus in their mind. This virus is injected very early in life, and it's the virus of winning. Illustrated by this phrase by Yogi Berra, who said, winning is not the most important thing, it is the only thing. Well, I'm going to say that's crazy, that's wrong, that's like the food that is going to kill us. It's just like sugar for someone with diabetes. See, because sooner or later in life, you're going to find the perfect storm. And when you find the perfect storm, you're going down. I mean, we all do. As the Buddha said, if everything goes well in our life, we're going to get old, we're going to get sick, and we're going to die. And that's the best that we can hope for. It's true. Now, accepting that truth does not mean we cannot live happily, but it does mean we are going to lose our final battle. And if winning is the only thing, we're going to die miserable because we're going to die losers. I want to stop that. I want to change that. And I want to offer you something that adds to responsibility. And I call it a spiritual harness, which is a way to think about responsibility in a non-destructive manner. It's a way to think about responsibility that supports taking huge challenges, opening our heart and loving and caring for things that are impossible to solve. You know, when people say, I'm going to deal with world hunger, well, you know you're not going to solve it. Somebody asked Mother Teresa, you know, how can you work with these people? You know you're not going to save them. And her answer was, well, the problem is, or the difference is, you see these poor wretches, I only see Jesus in his distressing disguise. And for her, it was not about saving people in a medical way, but it was in a way of confronting the situation, as she said, not doing great things, but doing small things with great love, which is the only thing we can do as human beings. And that's transitioning from power as a guidance to responsibility to principle. And I mean here moral principle. So take a moment and think of somebody you admire, someone that you look up to. It could be Malala Yousafzai as a real person. It could be someone that you know directly from your family, or it could be a character. I mean, here it doesn't matter, Katniss Everdeen or another character from a movie. But who do you admire is not so important. The key question is, why do you admire this person or this entity? You know, it could be Gandalf or it could be the Hobbit. You know, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's a character. What is it that makes you admire this person or this character? Why do you admire him or her? And when I ask this question, what people respond is usually things that are related to character, things like courage, integrity, I don't know, perseverance, justice, love, compassion, things like that. So let me choose Viktor Frankl, one of my heroes. You know, if I think of Viktor Frankl, what I admire in him was his resilience and his ability to stay open, loving, and supportive of other human beings, even after experiencing the horrible nightmare that he went through in Auschwitz. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian Jew, a psychiatrist who was caught by the Nazis and ended up an inmate in a concentration camp of Auschwitz. And he wrote about his experiences in an amazing book called Man in Search of Meaning, absolutely fabulous book. And it's harrowing. It's a very, very difficult book to read. It's beautiful at the end because it reveals the strength of the human spirit. But my God, I mean, just reading that was very painful. So he has great resilience and was able to transform his nightmare into the source of a theory that helped millions of people live lives of meaning. He developed a line of therapy called logotherapy, or the therapy of meaning, and with that he did an astounding amount of good in the world, helping patients and training other psychologists and psychiatrists. So that's what I admire in Viktor Frankl. Now notice that I'm going to give you the good news and the better news. The good news is that resilience has nothing to do with power. Love has nothing to do with power. Transforming something horrible into something beautiful has nothing to do with power. This is not dependent upon external circumstances. This is all things that he was able to manage himself. He was responsible for that. And I'm guessing, and you can tell me in the part of the questions now in about 5 minutes, what if this is true for you. But my guess is that when you look at your hero and why you admire him or her, you'll find that the features or the character attributes that makes this entity admirable to you are features that are purely within the realm of his or her control. This is not, very few people say, oh, I admire someone because they were successful, or because they were rich, or because they were famous. That's not, those external circumstances are usually not the reason for admiration. So the good news is we can control the very same things that will make us admirable to ourselves, which is the ultimate heroism. As Socrates said, in order to live a life of excellence, you have to be admirable to yourself. You have to know yourself, and you have to appreciate yourself because you display the very attributes that you admire in others. So it's a good illustration to look at other people and see what you admire in them, and then ask yourself, what could I do to become like them so I can display the same attributes? But the better news even are the news that when the mind and when your life that is based on success and power is finding the situation horrible, I call this the oh shit moment, your soul is taking the situation as an opportunity. It's saying, oh, fertilizer. Now, it's the same substance, but in a very different interpretation. So imagine if I say, I want to be resilient, and one of the character's attributes that I admire is resiliency. Well, what do I need to show resiliency? I need things to go wrong. It's impossible to show that I'm resilient or to demonstrate my resiliency to myself and others if I'm not confronting challenges that are difficult, that put me on edge, that make my life less comfortable than it would be if they did not arise. Now, my mind at that moment, like I like sailing, and a storm comes and I'm saying, oh shit, this is bad. But my pride is that I'm not just a fair weather sailor. I mean, I don't look for the storms, but I'm not afraid. I mean, a reasonable storm. I'm not talking about the perfect storm. I'm talking 20 knots, 25 knots. I mean, this is a reasonable storm that is manageable by a normal sailor. I'm not an expert. I mean, a 40 knot storm, it would be a stupid thing to be out. But anyway, when the storm comes and my mind is saying, oh, this is bad, there's a part in my gut that I'm feeling the opportunity to show, okay, I can be resilient, I can handle this. And Viktor Frankl said it beautifully. He said, we who lived in concentration camps can remember those who walked around comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one attitude in any given set of circumstances. That choice of attitude is the most amazing quality of every human being. And this is the question of heroism. What are the values that you want to express every moment in your life? What would it take for you to be your own hero in the way you behave when you face challenges? There's a beautiful story I'd like to use to finish, and it's the story of a boy who was walking on the beach, and there were thousands of starfish laying there on the sand that the tide had left. And he was taking one by one and just throwing them in the water. And walking on a line on the edge of the water and just throwing the starfish. Now, an old man crossed him, and he asked him, why are you doing this? There's thousands. You're not going to save them. And the boy picked up another one, threw it in the water, and said, well, it made a difference to this one. And that's really the Mother Teresa statement. We cannot do great things, cannot maybe not save all the starfish, but we can do small things with great love. And to finish with a poem, one of my favorite poems from Antonio Machado. I put it in English, but I'll say it first in Spanish. Anoche mientras dormía soñé, bendita ilusión, que una colmena tenía dentro de mi corazón, y las doradas abejas iban fabricando en él, con amarguras viejas, blanca cera y dulce miel. Unfortunately, the slide is not very well framed, so I'm going to read it fully in English. Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt blessed sight that a beehive I had here within my heart, and the golden bees were making in every nook and cranny white combs and golden honey. So this is the ultimate spirit of heroism, the values that you can express, taking the difficulties and the challenges of life and transforming them into an opportunity for you to show your true values. Thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to you, Grant.
Thank you, Fred. That was incredible. But you were just about traumatizing me with that Qantas flight. I mean, because of you, I'm not going to fly
Yeah, it's
anymore.
all your fault. It's all your fault. I'm having this terrible day. I mean, I should confess that's not true. I just came from a 5-day sail. So if I have to blame you for something, is you made me come from my sail half a day earlier to do this. It's afternoon in Guatemala, and I arrived at noon, so I could do this. So this was not I can't say that that's a true problem for me. So, but I wanted to blame you for something, so I took the chance.
Yeah, so I love that comment that you are the pilot of your life. I mean that's what did stick out. It's a great metaphor. So please send through your questions for Fred as we go. And I was just reflecting on Viktor Frankl. That is a fantastic book, and it was interesting. But he asked his students what he talks to his students about what their meaning and purpose is of their life, because what he experienced in the concentration camp was that the last minute, the people that, when everything was stripped away, when people gave up and died, it was because they didn't have a meaning or something that they were living for, and the ones who survived would were going back to a loved one, or in his case he had this idea of logotherapy, and he wanted to go back and write about what man's purpose was for meaning, and there was his meaning, and he asked his students what they thought was his purpose for his life, and the student said, well, you teach others about purpose. That's your purpose, to teach others purpose. And so I was going to ask you, Fred, what do you think's the meaning and purpose of your life? Because I think it's the ultimate question. If you can really grasp what it is that your life's all about, it gives you, as a leader, it gives you passion, it gives you purpose, and everything else kind of revolves, it gives you energy.
Yes. I want my life to be an invitation to consciousness. And I define consciousness as love and freedom. So I want to be an example. I want to live my life in love and in freedom, and support everybody around me that wants to do that by first my personal commitment to it, by inspiration, by support, by teaching, by help, by advice, by coaching, by whatever I can do. But that's my ultimate purpose, to invite people constantly to live their lives choosing love and freedom.
Yeah, and maybe you can send through in the chat box, what you think the purpose is of your life, or just ask some questions of Fred. Fred, you've sent everyone to sleep. No one's asking any questions. See, look what you've done to them.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, it's my fault, I tend to do that, but since we're talking about responsibility, part of it is my fault, but maybe part of it is because people are listening in Europe, where right now it's probably like 2 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, it's early in the morning for a lot of people. Now, what was the name of the dog whisperer again?
It's Cesar Millan. The program is usually syndicated either by the Animal Channel or by National Geographic. So when it's in cable, but you can get it. I mean, in YouTube. He's famous for the name The Dog Whisperer, and you can find. There's like, I don't know, seven or 8 seasons. So you can get the videos in YouTube, or you can buy, I'm sure in any place. I think it's the National Geographic that syndicates it, but I've seen it also with the Animal Channel.
Is it on internet if you don't have access to those?
Well, it's on cable TV, but it's in the internet for sure. If you do a YouTube search, you'll see many of the episodes are there. I don't know if all of them are there, but certainly many.
Yes. So we've got some questions coming through. Someone says, I'm from Argentina, I live in Houston. Someone says that you're their hero. My hero is Fred. So there you go.
Well, that's very rewarding, and I'm hoping to be a mirror. That the Zen masters have this beautiful statement. They say it takes a thief to know another one. So it takes whatever you see in others and whatever you attribute to me. Whoever said that, I would give it back and say that's your own. Whatever attribute you admire in me is the attribute that you can display in your life, because you have to have it in order to see it in others. And I feel very praised, and I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's Julieta. From Julieta. I believe my purpose in life is to empower women and bring families closer together. Also to show people what really unconditional love should be. From Princess Winfrey.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's very much part of the heroism of the feminine, is to love beyond measure, unconditionally. This is such a blessing that the feminine brings. I think it's so necessary in the world today, given how much hatred and discord is there. That trying to solve this purely by justice is it's kind of a masculine overdrive, and it doesn't work. Now, of course, you need both. You need the integration of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, and it's the unconditional love with the conditional love, and the two together make beautiful polarity and beautiful music. But if I have to guess what the world needs most today, is a good dose of unconditional love to balance how much conditioning we put in the care we offer. So that's a great statement.
And Fred, what about kind of the injustice in the world? It was interesting because we used to work in a family therapy centre, and we'd teach people, this, how to kind of empower their own lives, how to strengthen their own lives, how to be resilient. And a lot of them had been incredibly resilient in overcoming the difficulties that they had to overcome of poverty and injustice, really. Growing up in a context of, say, colonization and being displaced from their land and displaced from their language, and really kind of, second, third generation not actually being disconnected from their identity and kind of becoming powerless, really. And so we would try and strengthen that story of resilience and how they had survived and reconnect them with, there's a whole lot of work we did in that area, but it became important to recognise and not discount, that there is injustice, not to disempower people, but to recognise the story of survival within that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you may not know this, but I grew up in Argentina under a dictatorship, very brutal and bloodthirsty dictatorship. A lot of people disappeared. I had concentration camps around me. I mean, I didn't know, which was in itself a shocking realization afterwards when I discovered what had happened. I mean, it was like living in the middle of Nazi Germany and not knowing it. But I was not in one of them. I was lucky. I was a little too young to be a person of interest to those evil forces. But that has stayed with me, and I feel very strongly about injustice and about abuse and about violence. So personally, I think it's important to recognize that there's power in the face of that. There's certainly a practical power. So, for example, Viktor Frankl, if he asked himself, well, how did I contribute to ending up in a concentration camp? Well, there were signs before people were put in concentration camps. There were lots of signs that people didn't listen. The Jews did not, and other people in Europe did not listen as the hatred was becoming progressively stronger. And in Argentina, I saw, to make it personal, because I don't want to blame anybody, but clearly there were many signs around me that things were bad. I grew up thinking, oh, how could the Germans stood by when the Jews were being taken to concentration camps in the train cars and all that, and this big judgment about the Germans. And it turned out I was like the German, because I was there in Buenos Aires, and I saw people being stuck in Ford Falcon. These are green cars, green Ford Falcons that were the typical car of the intelligence services, and people were kidnapped in front of my eyes. And I had no idea where they were going, but I knew that this was not good. And I didn't do anything. I was too scared, and I was so scared that I didn't even think about it. So it wasn't that, oh, I knew what was happening, but I refrained from acting out of cowardice. It was worse than cowardice of action. It was the cowardice of even realizing what was happening and condemning it. And I think the ultimate power of every human being is the moral power, not practical. Sometimes you can't escape. Sometimes you're just stuck in a situation, and that, what can I say? Sometimes practically, I don't know any answer or any way to avoid injustice. But there's something very important that I've learned about my soul, and I think it's generic to the human soul, which is the action itself. It's a lot less damaging than surrendering to the action and not having a moral stance of condemnation. When I see evil around me, I don't shut up anymore. I'm not afraid of calling it evil, at least inside of myself. And there is no external consequence of that. You know, I may not be able to shout it from the rooftops because I'm afraid. I mean, there are some evils that I see around me, horrible things that it's just too dangerous. I have to confess, you know, I don't want to live in a permanent state of anxiety, so I won't tell it to everybody, but I do to my family, to my friends, and I don't have any friends that would support evil. I just think they cannot be my friends. I mean, I don't ask my friends to take a suicidal stance and start calling this evil publicly. But in our conversations, injustice, like you say, you know, displacing people from the land, forbidding them to have their own culture. I mean, some of the things that happen with the Aborigines in Australia, some of the things that every imperial power has done all over the world, some of the things that are happening now in Iraq and Afghanistan, with the United States engaged in wars and having 700 bases all over the world. The British did the same, and the Turks did the same with the Armenians. I mean, there are all these horrible things that are happening in the world today, and I just believe that the ultimate power is the condemnation, the moral condemnation that each one of us can make in their soul and share with our family, with our friends, and our small group of people that we share love and we share justice. Now, when someone, I mean, there are other people who are just not in that circle, and I feel willing to help them because they are not evil themselves. They're simply maybe unconscious, or they don't understand the consequences. But then there's a third circle of people that are doing it. They're just plain evil. They know what they're doing it anyways, and they have no compunction in violating basic human rights of those around them. Let me use the example of Malala. I mean, those Taliban that shot her, or there was another girl that they threw acid to her face. I mean, that's just stone evil, and there's no justification for, oh, well, it's their culture. Yeah, well, it's their culture to mutilate the genitalia of women too, and I don't give a damn. I mean, culture is the way that cowards hide to continue doing their evil. So I don't have a lot of cultural sensitivity. For me, morality and ethics are like logic, and they start with the fundamental human right of every person to live their life in freedom and in love. And anybody who impinges on that right, anybody who rapes, violates, murders, beats up, steals, kidnaps, enslaves anybody else it's a criminal, in my view. It's an evil character that deserves the ultimate form of reprehension, which for me, given I'm not a violent person, so I'm not prone to use violence to punish these people. I just don't know how to do it, and I don't think it solves anything. But I do use ostracism, so I will ostracize them from my life. My wife says that being Argentinian, I have an excess of self-esteem, and maybe it's possible, but I consider that my friendship is valuable to people, and anybody who even hints of evil or justifies other people's evils is ostracized from my circle of friends. I don't go against them necessarily, but I will not support them. And maybe this is part of my my masculine conditional love, but my way of loving them unconditional is to show them that there are some negative consequences of behaving in such a way, which is they cannot have a loving relationship with me or anybody who is my friend, because anybody who aids and abets criminals that are hurting other people also stops being my friend. Mm. So that's a long answer, but that's how I put together love and compassion with the need for justice.
Yeah, it's a big question, and we could discuss it all day, and already there's some other questions coming in around that, but there's some previous ones we'll address first. This is Barbie from Miami. Mm-hmm. When you're referring to feminine, would that apply for men as well? Is there a balance for masculine, feminine energy, from Barbara?
Yeah, yes. I specifically said feminine, not women, because the feminine is it's an energetic description for both men and women. So I think women have more feminine energy than men on average, but it doesn't have to be the case. The blessing of the feminine is a blessing for men. So I think every leader has to be able to integrate, like the Tai Chi sign, the yin and the yang, which are masculine and feminine energies too. So yes, I thank you for clarifying that. At least my perspective is that everybody, man or woman, needs to integrate the feminine energy in his or her life in order to be a hero.
Yeah, and Barbara, there's some great piece of research done by John Gersma, and he presented it at the conference as well. So if you check out his session, I'd highly recommend it. But what is interesting, because he ties in feminine traits, and those traits apply to men and females. So he's in terms of advancing women in leadership, he's linking feminine traits to leadership, not specifically to women and men. So in other words, men, he talks about the rise of feminine traits and how men have those traits as well, like collaboration and relationship building and various traits like that. But anyway, we'll move on to another question from Victoria. Fred, great conference, even though I cannot see your nice face and eyes. Oh, you've got some admirers.
Okay.
I have one question: how to be a protagonist and not feel guilty.
Yes, how to be a protagonist is the main character. Well, you see, people. My belief is that guilt comes from a misunderstanding of protagonism or responsibility, which is that whatever happens is your fault. And it's a punitive version of responsibility. It's, well, you're responsible for this. I can imagine the angry voice of my father say, well, who's responsible for this? Of course, nobody wants to say I am. I mean, the last thing I want is I don't want to be blamed for something, even if I did it, but especially if I didn't do it. Now, what I'm asking is a different question, is who wants to make him or herself responsible in the face of this? And this is the ability to respond to this, not to be guilty for this. Using the example of the Qantas airplane, when the engine blew up, you can say, well, who's responsible for this? And that could be a legal question. Was this the engine manufacturer? Was this maintenance? I mean, who takes the legal liability or the legal blame? But I'm asking a very different question. It's like, it's the question for the pilot, which is, how can you respond to it? This happened. I mean, it's unfortunate, it's bad, but it happened. And this is not a guilt trip for the pilot. Well, you should have made sure the engine was not going to blow up, and This is not realistic. Things are going to go bad sometimes in life. And when something goes wrong, I mean, it behooves you to ask, did I contribute to it? Did I make a mistake? Because sometimes we are guilty. I mean, not in a horrible way, but just saying, yes, I did something wrong, or I missed a step, or I overlooked something. But I'm not even asking that question now. The question is able to respond in the face of any challenge. That for me is the hero, which is not guilt, but it's a sense of power. It's I can do something to express my values, my principles in the face of any negative circumstance.
Okay, great, thank you. And we've got another question here from Shabnan. How does quietly condemning evil help get rid of it? When did the quiet majority in history overcome evil?
Well, I think that for example, well, let me say two things. I don't say that. First, I don't want to say that that's the only thing to do. There are lots of things to stop evil. If in front of me I saw a man beating up a woman, I mean, I wouldn't just stop evil by quietly condemning it. I would just intervene and say, well, stop this. If somebody walked into my house trying to hurt my family, I would use any means available to stop them. I would kill them if I needed to, or if I could. So I'm not saying quiet condemnation is the only way to stop evil. But let me give you an example. The Shah of Iran fell, not because the people had enough power. It was ostracism. It was the moral power of a majority saying this has got to stop. In Egypt, the dictatorship of Musharraf fell. Unfortunately, another worse one maybe came into power, but it was because people came out to the streets and said, enough. In Argentina, the dictatorship collapsed when they were shamed by the British and they lost the Falklands War. And I say Argentina won the war because we got rid of those evil dictators because they were completely discredited, and people came out to the street and said this has got to stop. So I feel that the moral condemnation is a tremendously powerful thing. The soldiers stop shooting on people when their girlfriends don't speak to them anymore, when they become embarrassed and ashamed of being protectors of evil. But they have to be called evil first. In a family, I mean, I just see so many abuses being committed and nobody says anything because, well, it's just family. And I say, well, I would start with the condemnation inside my soul and my understanding of truth and justice. Then sharing this with anybody who I feel safe sharing this. And then it's a matter of how much courage and how far one is willing to go to stop it. I mean, I said what I am comfortable with and where are the limits of my, I don't know, my strength or my daring in a world where I feel it's quite dangerous to speak about evil and to act in the face of evil. And what I mean by evil, let me give you an example. There's 3 million people in jail in the United States, 3 million. Many of them for victimless crimes, such as, for example, smoking or having marijuana or having drugs. I think the war on drugs is horrible, it's evil, because it's punishing people who, if anything, they're addicted and they're sick. And I mean, this is a very unfortunate thing, and they, in my view, they deserve love and compassion and support. I mean, if someone attacks someone else, well, the problem is the attack. It's not because they were on drugs. You can attack people on drugs. You can attack people on alcohol. You can attack people just because you feel like attacking people. That's not the attack is the problem, not the drugs. So that's a huge evil. Now, what can one do? I mean, I don't live in the United States, but I know that statistic. But there are people in jail in every country in the world about this. So how far is one willing to go in acting against that? And there are people that break the law on purpose and they end up going to jail. I mean, I think that's very courageous. I don't think that makes that much difference. I don't know what the solution is, but I'm talking about evils that go from very small things like someone mistreating a dog and you see it in the street to some huge things like millions of people worldwide being in jail because there's a cultural belief that the law should punish people who have an addiction, just like there was a law in the U.S. in the 1920s about alcohol. And alcohol wasn't moral before 1920, it's moral after 1920, and moral again after the 30s. Alcohol is always the same. It's just that some people decided, well, we should punish people for doing this. And consuming one substance like alcohol now, it's not punished, but another substance like, I don't know, cocaine, it will ruin your life and take you to jail. It ruins your life enough just for consuming it. We don't need to add the other. So, no, I'm not quietly condemning. I'm very openly condemning. I'm saying it here. I'll say it anywhere. Some people might not want to hire me because I say this, but I'll say it. Now, am I willing to go and stop the police from taking someone to jail when they catch them with cocaine and be shot? No. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not that brave, and I know, and I don't think that would stop it either. So, it's a very profound question, and I'm exploring every answer that I can in my life. But I invite each one of us to think, what's our strategy to stand up to evil?
Thank you, Fred. Well, I think that concludes our session for today. We have one more comment and question just come through, so we'll finish off on that. It's great to hear you analysing all these examples, Fred. What would you do with the politicians and bankers that drove countries to this endless crisis? Maybe a quick comment, and we've also just got people saying, great presentation, wonderful thought-provoking session, thank you. And I'll just hand it over to you to finish off.
Well, what I would do is, first of all, I call them evil. There's no doubt in my mind. I would never be their friends. I would never work for them. If I had the power, I would just take away all their powers. I would make them accountable for what they did. I would strip them of every immunity that they feel they have, and I let them suffer the consequences of their evil actions. Unfortunately, I can't, but I am not their friend, and I am not the friend of anybody who's friends with them. I just, they are horrifically evil in my view, and I wish I could vote for someone else, but I don't even know who I would vote for. But certainly condemning them and speaking up and saying, that is just egregious abuse and a horrifying just disenfranchisement of the people who are suffering the consequences. That's the place to start. I would never let them come into my house.
Thank you, Fred. Another great answer, and it just comes back to we're the pilots of our lives, aren't we? And we have the power to do what we think is right and what's best to live our lives the best we can. And certainly a presentation like this, I think, puts the power right back in your hands to take responsibility and to do to do what we can. So lots of great comments here about it was a great presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you, Grant. I made a joke during the presentation about you twisting my arm, but it was an easy arm to twist because I do think that your purpose in doing this is very noble. I consider you one of my friends, and I'm very glad to have the opportunity to share with you and the people participating in this experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, and goodbye, everyone. Good evening, good night. Thank you very much.